Judge Judy had watched angry people slam folders onto the bench. She had watched witnesses storm out, defendants burst into tears, and families fall apart over arguments that started with a single lie. But on this particular morning, the entire courtroom seemed to stop breathing when Karen Dawson threw both hands into the air and shouted, "This trial is a joke." The words bounced off the courtroom walls. No one spoke. The bailiff instinctively took one step forward. The plaintiff flinched but never looked away. Even Karen's attorney quietly closed his notebook. Realizing that his client had just done something that couldn't be taken back, Judge Judy didn't interrupt. She didn't scold Karen. She didn't threaten contempt. Instead, she leaned back in her chair and slowly rested her hand on a small black flash drive sitting beside the case file. She never plugged it in. Not yet, Karen laughed. She mistook Judge Judy's silence for hesitation. She believed she'd embarrassed the court. What she couldn't possibly know was that less than an hour earlier, that tiny flash drive had arrived from an independent security company, containing evidence neither side knew the court had requested. Judge Judy wasn't searching for an argument. She was waiting for the right lie. Experienced judges understand something many people never do. The loudest person in the room is rarely the one in control. Sometimes the quietest person already knows how the story ends. Before this unbelievable case goes any further, make sure you're subscribed for more unforgettable courtroom stories like this. If you're not already subscribed, now's the perfect time. And let us know in the comments where you're watching from, because what happened next completely changed the direction of this trial. At first glance, the lawsuit seemed ordinary. Karen Dawson, the owner of a luxury event planning company, was suing a freelance photographer named Daniel Harper for $22,000. According to Karen, Daniel had destroyed her company's reputation by refusing to deliver wedding photographs on time. She claimed she had lost multiple clients because of him. Daniel told a very different story. He wasn't dressed like someone trying to impress the courtroom. His Navy suit had clearly been worn many times. The leather camera bag resting beside his chair showed years of careful use. Tucked inside its front pocket was a folded envelope that looked old enough to have been carried for months. Judge Judy noticed it immediately. People often protect what matters most without realizing they're doing it. Daniel never interrupted Karen. He never rolled his eyes. He simply listened. His hands remained folded tightly together. Real honesty rarely performs for an audience. Karen, on the other hand, seemed determined to dominate every second of the hearing. She interrupted repeatedly. She corrected her own attorney. She answered questions before they were fully asked. Then she looked directly at Judge Judy and said, "This whole case is ridiculous. You already know he's guilty." Judge Judy calmly replied, "I don't know anything until evidence tells me." Karen smirked. "Then you're wasting everyone's time." A ripple of uncomfortable silence spread across the gallery. Judge Judy calmly wrote something on her legal pad. She never reacted emotionally. She didn't need to. Confidence isn't evidence. The courtroom has a pulse. And that morning, everyone felt it change. Judge Judy finally looked toward Daniel. "Mr. Harper, why haven't you spoken?" Daniel slowly reached into his worn camera bag. He carefully removed the folded envelope. Its edges were frayed. The paper inside had been opened so many times that the fold lines were beginning to split. "I've been waiting," he said quietly, "until someone asked the right question." Judge Judy nodded once. Then her eyes shifted briefly toward the unopened black flash drive. Karen noticed. For the first time since entering the courtroom, her smile faded. Because she suddenly remembered something that had happened the night of the wedding, something involving a security camera she believed had never recorded anything. If that flash drive contained what she feared, this lawsuit was about to stop being about late photographs and become something far more damaging. The courtroom remained silent after Judge Judy's final sentence. Karen Dawson sat perfectly still. Just moments earlier, she had controlled the room with loud interruptions and confident accusations. Now her eyes kept drifting toward the small black flash drive resting beside Judge Judy's file. She didn't know what was on it. That uncertainty frightened her more than any accusation ever could. Judge Judy finally turned toward Daniel Harper. "Mr. Harper," she said calmly, "start at the beginning." Daniel stood slowly. He wasn't theatrical. He wasn't looking for sympathy. He simply wanted someone to hear the entire story. "My business isn't a large company," he began. "It's just me." He glanced down at the camera bag resting beside his chair. "I've photographed weddings for almost 15 years. Judge Judy nodded. "And in all that time, I've never missed a delivery deadline." Karen immediately laughed. "That's because you conveniently forgot this one." Judge Judy raised one finger. Karen stopped talking, Daniel continued. "When Mrs. Dawson hired me, she insisted on complete creative control." Judge Judy looked toward Karen. "Meaning?" Karen answered confidently. "I expected professionalism." Daniel quietly reached into his camera bag and removed a printed contract. Every page had color-coded tabs. Every email referenced in the agreement had been attached behind it. Judge Judy noticed the organization immediately. People who prepare carefully usually expect to explain themselves. People who improvise often expect others simply to believe them. Daniel handed the contract to the bailiff. Judge Judy flipped through the pages. Paragraph after paragraph outlined the delivery schedule. The agreement clearly stated that photographs would be delivered within 30 business days after the client completed image selections. Judge Judy looked toward Karen. "Did you sign this?" "Yes." "And were these terms explained to you?" "They were." Judge Judy marked another note. Then she turned back to Daniel. "When did you send the image gallery?" Daniel answered without hesitation. 3 days after the wedding." "And when did Mrs. Dawson make her selections?" Daniel paused. She never did. The courtroom grew noticeably quieter. Karen leaned forward. "That's ridiculous." Daniel calmly removed another document. This wasn't a contract, it was a printed email chain. The first email politely requested Karen to select her preferred images. The second was a reminder. The third offered assistance. The fourth extended the deadline free of charge. The fifth simply asked whether she still wished to continue the project. Every email ended the same way. "I'll begin editing as soon as I receive your selections." Judge Judy looked at Karen. "Did you receive these?" Karen crossed her arms. "I get hundreds of emails." Judge Judy's expression didn't change. "That wasn't my question." Karen hesitated. "Yes." The judge placed the emails beside the contract. "This case is beginning to look different." The narrator understood why. Simple disputes often become complicated when one side mistakes volume for credibility. Karen had entered the courtroom convinced confidence would outweigh documentation. She hadn't expected Daniel to preserve every conversation. Judge Judy noticed something else. Every email Daniel sent had been opened. The red receipts were attached. Every one. Karen couldn't claim she never saw them. Judge Judy looked thoughtfully at the worn envelope Daniel had brought into court. "You haven't shown me what's inside that yet." Daniel held it carefully. "I was saving it." "What is it?" He took a slow breath. "The last handwritten note my father ever gave me." The courtroom became still. "He taught me photography before he passed away." Daniel unfolded the paper with remarkable care. Across the top, written in faded blue ink, were just a few words. "Your reputation is worth more than your paycheck. Protect it first." Judge Judy read the note silently before handing it back. She understood immediately why Daniel had carried it for months. Some people bring evidence to court, others bring reminders of who they promised never to become. Karen rolled her eyes. "That's emotional manipulation." Judge Judy looked directly at her. "No," she replied calmly. "That's character." Karen shifted uncomfortably. For the first time all morning, she avoided eye contact with the bench. Judge Judy slowly rested her hand on the unopened black flash drive once again. Then she asked one quiet question. "Mrs. Dawson, Have you ever been inside the ballroom after everyone else had left on the night of the wedding? Karen's face instantly lost color. She answered too quickly. No. Judge Judy never reacted. She simply looked at the flash drive because, according to the independent security company, someone had, and the cameras had captured every second of it. Judge Judy didn't reach for the flash drive. Not yet. She simply let the silence settle over the courtroom while watching Karen Dawson. Most people were focused on the evidence already presented. Judge Judy was focused on Karen. The defendant's confidence hadn't disappeared. It had changed. She was no longer trying to dominate the room. She was trying to predict what the judge already knew. Experienced judges understand that panic rarely begins with shaking hands. Sometimes it begins with someone suddenly becoming careful about every word. Karen adjusted the sleeve of her expensive blazer. She took a slow sip of water. Then she glanced, just for a fraction of a second, toward her attorney. Judge Judy noticed, when people stop looking at the judge and start looking at their lawyer, they usually know the facts are no longer on their side. Karen Dawson wasn't an unknown business owner. She had spent nearly a decade building one of the city's most recognizable luxury wedding planning companies. Her advertisements promised perfection, elegant venues, luxury decor, five-star service. On social media, she proudly described herself as the woman who makes impossible weddings unforgettable. Her reviews painted the picture of absolute professionalism, but polished public images can hide private habits. According to Daniel, Karen had one rule she expected every contractor to follow: never question her decisions. Photographers, florists, musicians, caterers, everyone was expected to obey without discussion. If they disagreed, they simply weren't hired again. Control had become part of her business model. Judge Judy had seen that personality before. People who depend on control often mistake compliance for respect. She looked back at Karen. Mrs. Dawson. Karen straightened immediately. You've described Mr. Harper as unreliable. That's correct. You've testified that his delay damaged your company's reputation. Exactly. Judge Judy nodded. Have you ever withheld information from one of your vendors? Karen answered instantly. No. The speed of the response caught Judge Judy's attention. Truth usually doesn't race. Performance often does. Judge Judy opened another section of the file. I'd like to discuss the wedding timeline. Karen smiled again. Please. She believed this part favored her. The ceremony ended at 6:15 p.m. Judge Judy continued. The reception concluded shortly after midnight. Karen nodded confidently. Correct. Judge Judy looked down. And according to your complaint, Mr. Harper packed his equipment and left before several important family photographs were completed. Karen leaned forward. Exactly. She pointed toward Daniel. He abandoned the job. Daniel never interrupted. He simply waited. Judge Judy noticed that too. People carrying the truth usually don't fear waiting their turn. Karen continued speaking. He ruined what should have been the happiest night of my client's life. Judge Judy finally looked toward Daniel. Did you leave early? Daniel answered calmly. No. Karen laughed loudly. He's lying. Judge Judy didn't react. She asked another question. What time did you leave? Daniel answered without hesitation. 1:43 in the morning. Karen immediately shook her head. Impossible. Judge Judy made another note. Interesting. She folded her hands. You sound very certain. I am. Judge Judy leaned back slightly. And how do you know exactly when he supposedly left? She paused. If you testified that you had already gone home? Karen froze. The courtroom became silent. Her attorney slowly turned toward her. Karen blinked several times. She searched desperately for an explanation. I meant, that's what the venue manager told me. Judge Judy calmly asked, Name the venue manager. Karen hesitated. I don't remember. Judge Judy nodded once. Liars often rehearse the accusation. They forget to rehearse the details. Karen shifted in her chair. Her earlier confidence had disappeared completely. The gallery sensed it before she did. A courtroom has a pulse, and that afternoon everyone felt it change. Judge Judy finally rested her fingertips on the small black flash drive. She looked directly at Karen. This independent security footage wasn't requested by either party. Karen's breathing quickened. It was requested by the court, her attorney frowned. What footage? Judge Judy answered without looking away from Karen. The ballroom's hallway cameras. Karen's face turned pale. Because she suddenly remembered something. About 20 minutes after the guests had left, she had gone back inside the venue. She believed no cameras were operating. Judge Judy calmly picked up the flash drive. Mrs. Dawson, Karen whispered. Yes? I think it's time everyone sees what happened after midnight. The courtroom leaned forward. Karen slowly closed her eyes because she already knew. The cameras had never stopped recording. Judge Judy held the black flash drive between two fingers. She didn't rush. She didn't dramatize the moment. She simply handed it to the courtroom clerk. Please display Exhibit 12. The monitor flickered to life. A grainy security camera image appeared. The timestamp in the corner read 12:57 a.m. The reception ballroom was nearly empty. Tables were half cleared. The dance floor was deserted. Only a handful of staff members remained. Karen sat perfectly still. Her attorney leaned forward. What exactly are we looking at? Judge Judy answered quietly. The truth. The footage began playing. Daniel Harper appeared first. He wasn't packing his equipment. He wasn't leaving the building. He was standing near the ballroom entrance, speaking with two venue employees while holding his camera. Judge Judy looked toward Karen. You testified he abandoned the event before the remaining family portraits. Karen nodded nervously. He did. Judge Judy didn't respond. She simply allowed the video to continue. Several seconds later, Karen herself entered the frame. She walked quickly toward Daniel even without audio. Her body language told a story. Her arms were moving wildly. She pointed toward him. Daniel remained completely still. Experienced judges understand that bodies often confess before voices ever do. Then the next camera angle appeared. This one overlooked the hallway leading to the bridal suite. Although there was still no sound, the interaction became unmistakably clear. Karen grabbed a folder from Daniel's hands. She flipped through several pages. Then, in visible frustration, she threw the folder onto the floor. A quiet gasp spread through the gallery. Judge Judy never took her eyes off the screen. Daniel bent down. He calmly picked up every page. Karen turned away. Then she pointed toward the ballroom exit. Daniel stood motionless for another few seconds before walking away exactly as she instructed. Judge Judy paused the video. The timestamp read 1:41 a.m. Asterisk. She turned toward Karen. Did you order Mr. Harper to leave the venue? Karen's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Judge Judy waited. Silence is often the final opportunity to tell the truth. Finally, Karen spoke. I was. Upset. That wasn't my question. Karen swallowed. Yes. Daniel didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He simply looked down at the camera bag beside his chair. The courtroom had just watched Karen destroy the foundation of her own lawsuit, but Judge Judy wasn't finished. Let's continue. The footage resumed. Daniel exited through the front doors. The timestamp changed to asterisk 1:43 a.m., exactly the time Daniel had testified. Judge Judy looked toward Karen. So Mr. Harper didn't abandon the event. She paused. He left because you personally ordered him to leave. Karen stared at the monitor. Her attorney slowly removed his glasses. The confidence he had carried into court disappeared. Judge Judy reached for another page inside the case file. This is where your testimony becomes even more important. She held up a printed email. It was sent at 8:12 the following morning. She handed it to the clerk. The message appeared on the courtroom monitor. From asterisk, Karen Dawson, Tucker Bride, and groom subject tuck photography. Delay Judge Judy read aloud. Unfortunately, our photographer left the reception early without permission, making several requested family portraits impossible to complete. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Judge Judy let the reaction settle before asking one simple question. Mrs. Dawson. Karen slowly looked up. Yesterday, under oath, you testified that this email accurately described what happened. Yes. Judge Judy nodded once. Then she pointed back toward the paused security footage. So explain this. Karen's breathing became uneven. I didn't think... No, Judge Judy interrupted calmly. You didn't think anyone would ever see the video. The words landed harder than any raised voice could have. Karen's shoulders slumped. Her attorney quietly whispered, Karen, if there's anything else, she closed her eyes. There is. Judge Judy looked at her without expression. Karen's voice barely carried across the courtroom. I deleted something. The gallery fell silent. Daniel slowly raised his head. Judge Judy folded her hands. What exactly did you delete? Karen looked at the monitor one last time, then down at the table. The emails, she whispered. The ones where I told him to leave. The courtroom froze. But Judge Judy already suspected there was one final piece of evidence still waiting inside Daniel's camera bag, and if it matched Karen's confession, this case would no longer be about a damaged reputation. It would become a deliberate attempt to manufacture one. Karen's whispered confession settled over the courtroom like a heavy fog. I deleted the emails. No one spoke. Even the gallery seemed afraid to breathe. Judge Judy didn't react with surprise. She simply folded her hands and looked at Karen with the calm expression that had unsettled countless dishonest witnesses before her. The question isn't whether you deleted them, Judge Judy said evenly. The question is whether you believe deleting them would erase what happened. Karen lowered her head. Across the room, Daniel quietly reached into his worn camera bag one last time. The same bag he had carried to hundreds of weddings, the same bag that still contained the faded note from his late father. But this time, he wasn't reaching for another photograph. He carefully removed a slim silver external hard drive. I almost didn't bring this, he admitted. Judge Judy looked at him. What is it? My automatic backup drive. The courtroom clerk accepted the device and handed it to Judge Judy. Daniel continued. My cameras, laptop, and editing software automatically save multiple copies of every client conversation and project file. He paused. I learned years ago that memories fail. Backups don't. Judge Judy nodded. Very wise. The narrator understood why that sentence mattered. Truth often survives in the places liars forget to search. Judge Judy connected the drive to the courtroom monitor. Within seconds, a timeline of emails appeared. Every message, every attachment, every timestamp. Nothing had been lost. The courtroom watched as one email after another filled the screen at 1:48 a.m. Just minutes after Karen ordered Daniel to leave the venue, she had sent him a message. Leave immediately. I'll handle the clients myself. Daniel had replied only 1 minute later. Please confirm in writing that you're dismissing me before all scheduled portraits are completed. Karen's response came almost instantly. Yes, leave now. I'll explain everything to the couple. A low murmur spread through the courtroom. Judge Judy let the words remain on the monitor. Then she quietly asked, Mrs. Dawson. Karen didn't answer. Is that your email address? Yes. Did you send this message? Karen closed her eyes. Yes. Judge Judy clicked another file. This one wasn't an email. It was a draft message Karen had written to the bride before sunrise. It had never been sent. Instead, she had rewritten it hours later. The original version read, I asked the photographer to leave after a disagreement, the final version. The one the bride actually received said, the photographer abandoned the wedding without permission. Judge Judy slowly looked up. There it is. Karen's attorney rubbed his forehead. He no longer looked frustrated. He looked defeated. Judge Judy addressed the courtroom. This wasn't a misunderstanding. She pointed to the two emails displayed side by side. This was a deliberate change in the story. She turned toward Karen. You didn't simply accuse Mr. Harper. You rewrote the facts after the event. Karen's voice trembled. I was trying to protect my business. Judge Judy answered without hesitation. Protecting your business does not give you permission to destroy someone else's reputation. The words landed with unmistakable force. Daniel remained silent. He didn't interrupt. He didn't smile. He simply looked at the faded handwritten note from his father resting beside the hard drive. Judge Judy noticed. Some people fight to win, others fight simply to keep their name. She turned back to Karen one final time. You called this trial a joke. Karen slowly nodded through tears. I was wrong. Judge Judy's expression never changed. No, she replied quietly. The joke was believing the truth could be edited. Karen buried her face in her hands. For the first time that day, no one saw an arrogant business owner. They saw someone watching years of carefully built credibility collapse under the weight of her own words. Judge Judy closed the evidence folder. She glanced toward the clerk. Then toward Daniel, finally back to Karen. The evidence is complete. The courtroom became perfectly still. Everyone knew the next words would decide not only the lawsuit, but the future of Karen Dawson's reputation. The courtroom had grown so quiet that the faint rustle of paper sounded louder than anyone's breathing. Judge Judy looked over the evidence one final time. She didn't rush. Every ruling deserved precision, especially one built on facts instead of emotion. She placed the insurance-style timeline, the printed emails, the security footage transcript, and Daniel's backup records into a single neat stack. Then she looked directly at Karen Dawson, Mrs. Dawson. Karen slowly lifted her head. Her eyes were red. The confidence that had carried her into court had disappeared completely. You filed this lawsuit claiming Mr. Harper damaged your business by abandoning a wedding. Judge Judy rested her hand on the evidence. But today's testimony established something very different. She held up the first document. You ordered him to leave. She lifted the second. You later emailed the bride a version of events that directly contradicted your own written instructions. Then the third. You deleted communications that proved your original account was false. Finally, she pointed toward the courtroom monitor, where the security footage remained frozen on the image of Karen throwing Daniel's folder to the floor. And independent video evidence confirmed exactly what happened. Judge Judy folded her hands. This court doesn't punish people for making mistakes. She paused. It punishes dishonesty when someone tries to profit from it. Karen wiped away a tear. I never meant for it to go this far. Judge Judy answered calmly. Most people who tell the truth never have to say those words. The courtroom remained silent. Daniel stood quietly beside his chair. He hadn't interrupted once during the ruling. He hadn't celebrated a single point in his favor. Judge Judy noticed. People who come to court looking for justice usually don't need applause. They need the truth. She turned toward Daniel. Mr. Harper. Yes, Your Honor. The evidence clearly shows that your professional reputation was damaged by knowingly false statements made after you were dismissed from the event. Daniel simply nodded. Judge Judy continued. The plaintiff's claim against you is dismissed in its entirety. Karen closed her eyes, but Judge Judy wasn't finished. On your counterclaim for reputational harm, lost business opportunities, and documented financial damages resulting from those false statements. She glanced once more at the records. This court awards judgment in your favor in the amount of $22,000. A quiet gasp moved through the gallery, the exact amount Karen had demanded she was now ordered to pay. Karen's attorney lowered his head. He didn't object. There was nothing left to challenge. The evidence had answered every question before he ever could. Judge Judy looked directly at Karen one final time. Then she delivered the sentence that would become the lasting memory of everyone in that courtroom. The loudest lie may steal attention for a day, but documented truth always collects the final judgment. Nobody moved. Karen stared at the table. For the first time since entering the courtroom, she understood that her greatest mistake hadn't been losing her temper. It had been believing she could rewrite reality after it had already been recorded. Judge Judy added one final order. because this case involves knowingly false business communications that affected a licensed professional's livelihood. Today's record will be forwarded to the appropriate consumer protection and business licensing authorities for whatever review they consider appropriate. Karen's shoulders slumped. She quietly whispered, "I understand." It was the first completely honest sentence she had spoken all afternoon. Daniel slowly opened the worn envelope one last time. He looked at the handwritten note from his late father. "Your reputation is worth more than your paycheck. Protect it first." He folded it carefully and placed it back inside his camera bag. Judge Judy noticed. "You carried that note through this entire case." Daniel smiled softly. "My father always said cameras record images." He looked toward the judge. "But character records everything else." Judge Judy gave a small nod. "I think he was right." Within 24 hours of the ruling, several former clients contacted Daniel to apologize after learning the truth behind Karen's accusations. Within 48 hours, multiple wedding venues quietly reconsidered their business relationships with Karen's company, choosing to review past complaints before signing new contracts. Within 72 hours, Daniel received more booking requests than he had accepted in months, not because the courtroom had made him famous, but because the truth had restored the trust that false accusations had nearly taken away. The narrator reflected on why this case stayed with everyone who watched it. It was never really about one wedding. It wasn't even about $22,000. It was about the danger of believing that confidence can replace honesty. Karen shouted, "This trial is a joke." In the end, the only thing exposed as a joke was the story she had invented. Truth doesn't become weaker because someone laughs at it. It waits patiently, sometimes inside an old email, sometimes inside a forgotten backup drive, and sometimes inside a courtroom where one calm judge refuses to confuse volume with evidence. If this story reminded you that integrity always outlasts arrogance, be sure to like this video, subscribe for more unforgettable courtroom stories, and share it with someone who believes the truth is always worth defending. And tell us in the comments, at what exact moment did you realize Karen's case had completely fallen apart?